Well, welcome everyone to our second Process Optimization Academy session. So if you missed the first, it's recorded and posted on the community right where you found the invite to register for this session. So you can always go back and rewatch the first session. Now, a little bit of recap, just the purpose of these sessions are to help us all get better educated on ServiceNow's in-platform process mining capabilities. We'll provide how-tos, practical guidance and use cases. We'll do some product updates. And then as a group, we'll just simply come together to exchange ideas and collaborate so we all continue to get better. That's what most of us are interested in doing on a regular basis. Now, how these sessions are going to work. We'll have a scheduled topic that we'll usually cover for about the first 30 minutes or so. Today, we're really going to be diving into the Analyst Workbench. So a lot of the flexibility you have to work with data that you've mined. And then this is typically going to be used by, let's say, a business analyst or a process owner, this workbench, to identify opportunities. Then what we'll do is we'll open up for questions on that topic or the chosen topic for the session. Then after that, we'll open it up for just general questions about in-platform process mining. And as I've already hinted at, these sessions will be recorded and eventually posted in the community. So if that's a no-no for you at your company, you've been warned. Consider yourself warned. And then finally, feel free to post your questions in the chat. I still haven't figured out how to set up the official Q&A window, so we're going to use the chat again today. And then oftentimes during these sessions, we'll pause and ask for questions when it makes sense. Other times we may ramble on for quite a bit of time and then go back and check the chat. You should all be on mute. So if we do pause and you ask for questions, make sure you remember to unmute yourself if you want to be heard. And then I guarantee, because I'm still learning just like you all are, that there's going to be times when we don't have an answer for the question immediately. And in those situations, what we'll do, we'll follow up and we'll post them on the process optimization community, or as we get to know you better, we may just reach out directly to you as well just let you know that we posted it. And then for some of the more involved ones, we'll probably use them as a topic for a future session. This is the slide that says anything I say and do here today can't be held against me in the court of law. It's also the slide that says, as part of these conversations, if we make any forward-looking statements, which we usually tend to do about what might be coming in future releases, you should take them as such. Make no decisions based on them because they're always subject to change. And I'm sure here you've read all the fine print, and most of you have probably seen this slide before. Just a real quick reintroduction for those that have been on the last session, an introduction for those first-time viewers or attendees. My name is Dan Grady. I've been at ServiceNow for about 6 years now, focused primarily on our Now Intelligence solutions and helping our customers understand how they can get more value out of all the rich data that's flowing through the platform. So things like performance analytics, predictive intelligence, our virtual agent capabilities. And now I'm one of the outbound product managers focused specifically on our process mining capability, which helps you kind of x-ray your workflows and see where there are inefficiencies and rework taking place, and helps you identify improvement opportunities or that take the form of automation or sometimes simply just stopping doing things inside of a workflow that you have out there. What we'll be covering today specifically is we're going to talk a little bit more about the types of questions that process mining helps you answer, because it's a little bit different than some of the stuff that you may have been doing in the past. Then we'll dive into different process mining analytical capabilities that are surfaced via the Process Optimization Workspace, so you get an understanding of all the different ways that you can actually work with a process map and data that you've mined. Then we'll transition over to a live demo of the Analyst Workbench, so you'll see a bunch of the capabilities. Open it up for questions, of course. Make sure you put them in the chat as we're going along, just in case we don't pause and we want to go back to them. And then for those that have not been here before, after we get questions out of the way, we'll just talk a little bit about how you can get started on your own, what resources are out there, and then sessions that we have coming up in the future. All right. So last time we did a bit of a process mining 101, just as a quick refresher. With everything we do, there's a designed and desired path in our minds for how it should work and how things should play out, whether that be in a session like this one here, these Academy sessions that we're running, or probably more relative to you or important to you, a business process. And when you design things like a business process, you design for efficiency as well as completeness to provide the best experience possible for everyone. Unfortunately, what we design isn't always what ends up happening in reality. Now, with in-platform process mining or process optimization, what that allows us to do is use the audit log data that is generated as records move through a given workflow to create a visual representation of what is actually happening within our given processes, right? It shows us the reality of our business processes. And this new level of visibility helps us accelerate our ability to identify inefficiencies and improvement opportunities. And then process mining is going to give us that ability to answer process questions that have historically been super challenging for us to answer over the years. Now, most of us probably have dashboards today that allow us to answer these types of questions about our workflows. How much volume did we do? What types of tickets were they? How long did it take to close those tickets? Are we meeting our goals? Are we improving? Those are all important questions to know the answers to. And there's an in-platform solution called Performance Analytics that many of you are likely using to help you answer those types of questions. The thing is, information tends to be one of the most addictive things out there. And you give somebody a little, and they always want more, especially when targets are missed and things are trending in the wrong direction, or they see something on one of these dashboards that that doesn't actually add up to what they think is going on. That's when we start getting the questions that process mining can help us answer. Where is our process stuck? Where is the unnecessary rework happening? Where are we wasting time? How can we improve our resolution times, which is something that many of us have as a goal that we focus on? Are we conforming to the process principles that we set forth for ourselves? Which tickets have too many hops? Who's holding on to the tickets the longest? That's one that always comes up. Who's holding on to the tickets the longest? I like to call that the finger pointing report. Some people that are more glass full like to call that the opportunity to improve report or question. Maybe we want to answer what or who is contributing to our SLA breaches, or which vendors are speeding us up, or which ones are slowing us down. We've all been asked these types of questions before. These are essentially the whys behind those KPIs that we show on those dashboards inside of Performance Analytics. And the different analytical capabilities of process optimization are what's going to help our business analysts and process owners answer these questions so they can identify and prioritize improvement opportunities and keep all of those KPIs moving in the right direction. So that was the quick little recap from the last time with some of the new stuff in terms of the types of questions that we can answer with process optimization. So in the last session, we also covered the building blocks, but we really focused on how to set up a model, right? Those first 6 bullets at the top of the screen there. Now, today, what we're going to focus on is working with the results of a model and how to navigate the Analyst Workbench. So I'll introduce each of the capabilities in slides, and then we'll see them in action in a live demo a little bit later on. Now, that live demo is going to be a little bit of a harbor tour because it's unlikely that you'll have too many scenarios in real life where you're just going to need to use all the capabilities inside of the Analyst Workbench in combination to find an insight. It's designed to help surface opportunities without you having to click 74 times to get to that insight. So you're often just going to need 1 or 2 of them. So it's going to be more of a feature-oriented demonstration, but I want to make sure that you see all the flexibility that's out there for you. So let's start with bottleneck analysis. Now, bottleneck analysis capability, this is going to help us isolate which process transitions are causing the delays. So a transition, for example, can be a record moving from one state to another, like a ticket moving from in progress to on hold, or it could be from one assignment group to another. So maybe we're looking to see how long it takes to triage a ticket and move to a second level group. Bottleneck analysis helps highlight those individual transitions and gives us visibility into lots of detailed metrics around what's happening inside of each of those transitions, like how often it's happening and the average duration between those that hop. And that's where we'll find those opportunities to kind of dig in, or we'll be presented with, hey, here's a long running hop. Let's focus in on that one and see if there's a way that we can kind of shorten that time and improve the overall process time. Now, while bottleneck analysis focuses on specific transitions, process variation analysis focuses on the complete paths or routes a record is taking. So it'll show you each and every different path that's out there. And when you see these and see the reality of your processes, when you start visualizing your data, they're going to be way more than you anticipated. It happens every time we start working with customers. And ultimately, this is one of the ways we can see how well we're conforming to our design processes. And then we can start seeing things like where are tickets and teams skipping steps and which routes are the long running ones and the ones that have way too many hops. With both bottleneck and process variation, you'll see you have the ability to drill down into a map that focuses on a given route or a given bottleneck. But sometimes you're going to want to isolate a very specific set of transitions. For example, like tickets that go from group A to group B and then back to group A. And maybe you want to add in the fact that that contains the word Zoom, or maybe you want to add a condition to filter on anytime you see in the short description, not it, or in the work notes, the words not it, to see some of that ping ponging that goes back and forth. You've got these advanced filtering capabilities to ask and answer these types of advanced questions about a given workflow or process that you have on the platform. Now, you've also got breakdowns that can offer another way to filter the data on the map. Well, but they also, in addition to allowing you to filter the map, the process map, based on different criteria, they also give you statistical insights into the data that's going to help guide you into which breakdowns you may want to filter on. And we talked about this the last time, but you do have the ability to configure up to 10 breakdowns per project. And when we say 10 breakdowns, we're talking about the overarching, I'll call it a category, even that's a poor choice of words because category typically is one of your breakdowns. But think things like assignment group, service, priority, category, channel. You can configure up to 10 of those, but you can have as many elements inside of those as you want. Now, you want to be careful. You certainly don't want to choose CI and have all your CIs. That's probably not something that you're going to want to do in terms of the breakdown elements themselves. Typically, actually not typically, these breakdowns have to be choice and reference fields. Now, another capability, as you start using all these different ways to filter and isolate your data, you're going to start to see some interesting things. And then you may want to compare a filtered map to an original map, or compare maps based on two different intake channels. Like you want to start looking at what the process looks like if the intake channel is email versus maybe if something's coming in via the portal, or maybe you want to compare two different vendors or regions or assignment groups. You can do this. You guys are getting the idea, right? You can, and then we'll provide you side-by-side stats for each of the models to help you do that comparison. Now, one thing to point out here is that you can also save up to 5 versions of a model, and you can compare those different versions. And this is where I like to remind everyone that process mining isn't a one-time thing, right? You're going to do some analysis, make some improvements, and then you're going to want to come back and see the new reality of your process after you've made those awesome changes, added that automation, added that RPA bot or whatever it might be, or just removed an approval step. You're going to want to see how things have changed and then where the next best improvement is in this new reality. That's one of the things it's really important to keep in mind, is that doing this process mining this is not a one-time exercise. You're going to continually want to come back to your maps and remine and see where new opportunities are based on the changes that you're making. Now, as we find all these inefficiencies and opportunities, this is one of the things that I think is a benefit of being in the platform. You're going to want to share and collaborate with others involved in the process. So you can take snapshots of your findings and then invite others to look at the map. This is one of my colleagues, Jeroen van Gassel. He likes to say it takes 2 to tango when it comes to process mining as an exercise. You're going to have some folks that are really comfortable with, let's say, the data and maybe the platform. And they're going to be good at helping you set up the models. And then you're going to need somebody that knows the process really well to interpret the data that they're seeing in these maps. So this ability to kind of get more people involved in the process and help identify the opportunities and then help identify how to attack and improve upon them. It involves some collaboration. The mining part of it is just one part of the improvement process. Now, in addition to these core analytical capabilities, there are 4 capabilities right now that I like to bucket underneath process intelligence. So we have our finding definitions that have been around since our Quebec release. Then we added cluster analysis, which was made available in Rome. Then in San Diego, we added both root cause analysis and then an integration out of the box with something called automation discovery. So I wanted to call out the releases here because I know as customers, you guys are on all different levels of releases. So as we go through some of these capabilities, you'll have an understanding of what's available to you with the release that you're at versus the things that you'll be getting as you start to upgrade over time. So finding definitions, these are preset rules that you can apply to a set of records that you're mining. They basically bucket and highlight non-conformant activity. So things like multi-op issues or processes that are bypassing steps can be highlighted right up front before a process owner or analyst even views the map. So we provide some pre-built finding definitions via content packs to get you started, but then you're going to wind up creating your own to test and prove hypotheses or monitor whether the processes are conforming over time. You've got your cluster analysis, and what this does is it takes advantage of that in-platform machine learning capability that you may have used in the past. So you may have used predictive intelligence clustering framework in the past to identify patterns in your unstructured data that live in things like ticket notes and descriptions. We've built that into process optimization. So once you've narrowed down records via bottleneck, variance, breakdown filters, and finding cards, you're likely going to want to get some information from the records themselves. As I mentioned earlier, right? Information is and data are very addictive. You give a little, you always want more. You can use this cluster analysis to help you determine some patterns inside of the textual data, inside of the records you've isolated. And this is a huge capability to help you start to understand how best to address an inefficiency you've identified. Root cause analysis, it helps us find connections and influencers in the data based on the record attributes like category, channel, or assignment groups. And then we're going to use these root causes that have been identified to then further filter down the records. And then finally, we've got automation discovery. So this solution uses a library of about 180 common IT issues and automation opportunities. And we map those records we're mining via machine learning techniques. The dashboard then is going to show you where your biggest potential impact based on acting on the recommended automation opportunities are. So just so you know, this solution is currently designed for incident. So while we can apply process mining across multiple workflows, this specific portion is really just focused on incident. All right. Now that we've got the lay of the land and a general understanding of what we'll be working with, let's kind of dive in and look at those capabilities live and in action. So I'm going to swap over here. I'm going to extend my session. And the first thing you may be asking yourself is, how do I get to that map that I keep seeing, that Analyst Workbench? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you're going to look for process optimization. And underneath process optimization, you're going to have your Analyst Workbench. Now, you can also get to that if you're in the new world here in San Diego, the next experience underneath workspaces. That'll probably be listed there if you have access to that workbench. We're going to click on this Analyst Workbench, and that's going to take you to a place where you have all the cards or projects. Projects is another way for models that have been mined, that either you've mined or that have been shared with you. You can see the ones we created the last time in the last session, the Process Optimization Academy. Now, on the card itself, you're going to get some high-level insights. I'm going to use this incident process optimization one, and I'm just going to show you another little capability here. Say incident to filter these. And I'm going to use this incident process optimization one. You'll get some basic information around the number of records. So we've got 22,000 records here, the process, the variation, and the average duration that's there. So I'm going to drill into this. And you'll get these 3 tabs on the screen. So I'm going to talk you through kind of each of these capabilities that come inside of this workbench or workspace, sorry. So across the top here, you just got some basic stats about the data that you mine. So you've got the total number of records that you're seeing here. This is the 22,500 that we're going to see inside of the map. You see that we've got 3,200 unique routes or paths that these 22,000 incidents have taken. The average duration of those records is 27 days. The standard deviation is 97 days. So that's kind of the variability in the process. The median duration of 8 days. And then this is something that kind of confuses folks every now and then. It says total records in the model. Now you might say to yourself, well, how is that different than this 22,500 here? Well, what the difference is, when we create our project, we create some filter criteria and point it at a set of records, and then we run mining. Sometimes the records that we're mining don't actually have audit data associated with them. So we have nothing to mine on. And this is really showing you this 22,900 was the total records based on the criteria that we set for our project. This 22,500 are the ones that we were actually able to mine because they had audit data. So that's a question that typically comes up, is what is the difference between these two numbers? Then as we move down the screen, we've got our summary and insights page. And this is kind of your home screen that gives you a lot of information and really guides you to some opportunities without you actually having to do a lot of clicks. So I'll just walk through some of the stuff on the screen here. We've got our goals and KPIs. So this is kind of what's happening within our process and the momentum that we have, either in a positive or negative direction based towards the targets we set for specific KPIs. And if we think about incident, you're going to think about your mean time to resolve or average time to resolve as a key metric that you tend to focus on, and something that you're always looking to improve. And then one of the leading indicators of mean time to resolve is our percent of incidents resolved on first assignment or by the first group that we give the ticket to. So these are here. These are completely configurable based on the process that we're working with. So you're allowed to set up in San Diego a set of KPIs per table, so incident, problem, change, and then surface them here. Something that's coming in the Tokyo release, remember that safe harbor slide, or something that's on the roadmap, I should say. And for a future release is to be able to have more than one set of KPIs per table that's there. And if you wanted to adjust this page and add additional KPIs or reports to that, you can do that inside of the UIB or a UI builder interface. So it's customizable by you and our customers. As we move down the screen here, then we have our finding cards. And for me, these are key. Obviously, the visualizing your process in the map is powerful, and that's what everyone gets excited about. But really, being able to immediately bucket inefficiencies and areas of focus to help narrow down the map right up front saves a tremendous amount of time. Right? So for example, things like multi-hop issues, these are something that are typically going to impact that MTTR metric that we have out there. And we want to understand if there are any unnecessary reassignments in that subset of tickets that we mine. So this finding, this preset rule kind of calls our attention to an area of opportunity right away, right? So I could say of those 22,000 records that we mined, you know what, 6% of them are going through multi-hops. I can see that right here in terms of the records. And the average impact from a time perspective, those typically take about 6 days. And the total impact, if I did that average time times the total records that are going through multi-hops, there's 20 years of total impact. I know that number seems ridiculous, but sometimes large numbers get people's attention and kind of give us some sense of the magnitude of a small change might make in terms of productivity impact. So setting up this card for, let's say, a multi-hop issue, this is one of the ones we provide you out of the box, but they're very, very powerful, these finding cards. Now I do, with these finding rules, have the ability to kind of categorize them in terms of whether they're a performance impact, a conformance impact, or a quality impact. So I can narrow these down here and just focus in on my conformance and quality. And here's another out of the box one, but an important one from a quality perspective. So you've got tickets that the resolution rejected, right? The resolution has been rejected by the customer one or more times. And that's typically a good training opportunity, or perhaps maybe it's a knowledge quality improvement opportunity if those records have knowledge articles associated to them. And maybe it's an opportunity to dig into the records, see which articles are attached to those that are being rejected, and check on those articles and prove them. So for many of you, you already have hypotheses around certain inefficiencies that exist in your organization. These finding rules are going to help you prove out those hypotheses and then isolate what can be done to improve, and then get some impact numbers to help you prioritize if you start using the finding cards. And anytime, once you set up these cards, every time a mining is run, these cards will show based on whether the criteria is met. So it's a good way to kind of get yourself a set of inefficiencies that you think exist inside of your organization, or perhaps you identify them using the workbench, and then kind of continually check to see if they're coming back, if they're gone for good, or if they start to come back. These finding cards will help show you that. Now, as we move down the screen, we have our variation analysis, and this is going to help us get visibility again into those different routes our tickets are taking. And you have different ways to kind of look at these routes. I can kind of start sorting them by the highest volume, the longest average duration, the most steps that are involved. And I can also start filtering these. So let's say I want to start looking at just the routes that are greater than 10 steps or have more than 10 hops inside of them. I can do that here, hit apply. Wait for it to apply, and maybe it won't this time. Let me just refresh this here. I probably talked too long. But if we come down here, I should be able to filter on these and say, hey, number of steps is greater than, let's say, 10. Hit apply, and that should start filtering these out and show me these multi-hop issues. You can see I've got 205 routes that have more than 10 hops in them. And then I can start saying, you know what, maybe I only want to look at the ones that have the most records inside of them and look at these. So just to kind of, you want to start seeing if things are actually conforming to your out-of-the-box process, variation analysis right up front on the summary and insights page is going to allow you to start looking at those things that are conforming versus the ones that are really out of bounds from a process perspective. And then once you isolate these using that filter criteria and the sorting, you can click in one single button here to get to the view of this on the map itself. So it'll help you isolate where you want to start your analysis. And then remember, variance analysis is focused on the entire route. Our bottleneck analysis is focused on individual hops or transitions within the data, the process itself. So when we set up our process, our project the last time, remember we kind of set up our activity definitions, and those were things like state and assignment group. Well, if you have multiple activity definitions per inside of your model and inside of your project, you can come in here and say, you know what, maybe I only want to focus in on the transitions from a state perspective, or perhaps I want to focus in on the transitions from an assignment group perspective. So I can come in here and I can start saying, all right, I want to look at which groups are passing tickets back and forth, and I want to see how often that is happening. Maybe I want to see where that's happening more than once within a workflow. Maybe I want to see which groups that pass tickets back and forth have the longest duration, average duration of time. Again, helping me identify a bottleneck inside of my process. And right from here, once I identify that bottleneck, I can click on View and Workbench and just isolate the map to that subset of data. All right, so all we did so far, we haven't even got to the map, right? Everybody loves the map, the process map, but just this summary and insights page alone, right? Right from here, there's so many different ways to help us get started and begin identifying opportunities to improve inside of our processes. Now let's jump over to the map itself, the Analyst Workbench. All right, inside of here, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm going to start with the map itself because that's the piece that jumps right off the page for folks. Things we can do here. One is we can get basic statistics about the model. And this little model statistics box here, you can see it's got the same information as we have up above. But as we start filtering down the map, this is going to filter down to show how our filtered map compares to the total map. So it's right there side by side and gives you some visibility into what's going on. We also have this activity legend down here. So the activities, again, you configure those when you're setting up your project. Those are the things that you're going to see inside of your transitions, like your state and your assignment group. And in this case, we have additional activities for things that are causing a change, or when that was introduced into the process, as well as when a problem record was created. And as you start adjusting the map, when these nodes start showing up, they will be highlighted over here in the activity legend itself. Now, what we're going to do here, one of the things that people always say is like, Dan, you say there's 3,200 routes here. That's not what I see on the map, right? Well, that's because by default, we only show the highest volume, or top 20% in terms of volume of routes that are taken. And I can use this slider here to adjust that and start showing me more of the routes inside of it, right? And as you start adjusting that, it becomes more and more challenging to read. And this is where I was saying earlier, right? You may have an idea in your head in terms of how many routes your workflows are taking, or your records are taking inside of your organization. Once you start visualizing it, there's always going to be a lot more than you expected or anticipated. The other slider here is for activities, right? And this is going to be by default at 100%. This is going to control how many activities we see in the map. That's these little nodes that are here. Typically, when you're looking at a process map by state, you're going to be able to leave this at 100%. Where this really comes in handy is if you create a map specifically focused on assignment group transitions, and you have a lot of assignment group transitions or assignment groups in the organization, you're going to want to use this to maybe control the number of assignment groups that you're showing, and really focusing on the handoffs that are happening the most often. So that's where that's going to come in. All right, now let's come over here, and I'm going to focus in on just some basic things of the map itself. And my UI and UX people or team would probably tell me you shouldn't even have to call these out, but we're all learning here together. So I think it's important to just call out some of these things. The first thing is just the lines or the arrows on the map. You may notice here that the lines have different levels of thickness, and the different levels of thickness are an indication of the relative volume of the tickets that are going through that path. So that's the thickness piece here. So if you see a thicker line, that means that more records are typically moving through that part of the map, or that transition on the map. I also have here, you'll notice the numbers. Now the numbers here, in this case, this metric is my primary metric, and that's my total occurrences. Like how many times has a record went between, in this case, assigned and in progress. But I can adjust that. Maybe I don't want to look at the total occurrences. Maybe I want to look at the unique occurrences, right? So typically, sometimes tickets can take a hop more than once in their life cycle. So that's the total occurrences. But if I use unique occurrences, there might be a slight change in some of the numbers, because it's only going to show me if that ticket went through that hop once in its life cycle. And then very often in this scenario here, you want to look at not only the volume of tickets moving through a transition or through a set of nodes, you're also going to want to look at the velocity. So I can add a secondary metric to look at the average duration. Time is really one of the things that we're focusing on, right? Volume and time together help us understand how to calculate our productivity improvements or impact down the line. So you're going to be not only looking for volume as an opportunity, but you're also going to be looking in many cases for the time. So where are my long running hops in which I have a lot of things to focus on, a lot of tickets going through those long running ones. And then the last thing that I'll just point out on the map here from a visually that you see right away is not only the thickness of the line, but the direction of the line, right? We want to be looking for, in many cases, arrows that are going back up the hill, right? So in this case here, I see this one arrow, awaiting caller info to in progress. Most of the lines are going to be moving down, but anytime you see an arrow going back up the map, that's typically an opportunity for improvement. There's some sort of rework going on there. So we want to be looking for thickness of lines, but also the direction of the lines. And if it happens to be going up, that's something that we want to focus in on. So in this case here, the one going back up, this is showing me the specific transition of awaiting caller info to in progress, right? And that's anytime you click on either a transition here, like one of these numbers, you're going to get the specific data for that piece. So I can see my total occurrences, my unique occurrences, my max repeat occurrences, total duration in years, standard deviation. These are all things that I'm going to be able to see on this specific transition here to help me understand what's going on and see if there's potentially an opportunity that I want to focus on inside of there. These cards also then give me the ability to do some additional analysis above and beyond that. So just like everywhere else in the platform, if you have the rights to do so, I can drill into these and I can view these records. So if I just want to look at those records that we're going through there, you'll notice I'm getting 1800 here. That's the unique occurrences of the records that moved back and forth, right? So I can drill down into the records. ACLs are respected here. And then I always like to point this out whenever you get to the list. There's some list. The lists inside of the platform have some capabilities on them that people don't always seem to know about. One of them is the fact that on any list inside of the platform, if you have the process optimization analyst and above role, you'll have this ability to take that list and mine that data by in a single click launching process optimization. But the other one, and this is one that I think is going to be really useful for you as you start working with process optimization and drilling down into records that are either surfaced on a node card like we looked at there, or maybe via cluster analysis, is this ability to launch into interactive analysis. So in a single click, I can take a list on the platform and turn that into an interactive dashboard to help me further refine the data and look for opportunities inside of the data. So we use process mapping and process mining at a high level there to identify a transition that potentially is problematic. And now I want to start visualizing those records to look for some additional opportunities inside of there, or help me guide me to where I should be focusing in a little bit deeper. You can do that in a single click right from the list view there using interactive analysis. All right, done a bunch of stuff so far. Also, as I come in here, I told you it was going to be a harbor tour today. So we can view the records for that specific transition or that specific node. I can also then, right from here, view root cause analysis. So this is kind of using machine learning behind the scenes to help me understand where my top influencers are within that set of records that move through that transition. So in this case here, it's kind of calling out, hey, for things that have moved through this transition, this in progress or awaiting user info back to in progress, guess what? 14% of them, they at one point were initially classified and started with that IT support service desk level 1. And if that's something that rings a bell in my head or something that I want to investigate or focus in on, I can click on this and then filter my map based on just the tickets that started with that IT support service desk level 1. Right? So I can use this to do some additional refinement of the map and focus in on an area of opportunity potentially. Then also from here, again, on these nodes, I have the ability to view clusters. And what this is going to help me do is take the unstructured data inside of the records that move through that transition and kind of identify patterns or opportunities inside of there. So if you're not familiar with clustering, what I'm looking at here is I've kind of said, hey, for those tickets, here are my biggest clusters. What it's done is it's looked at all the short descriptions and descriptions inside of those tickets and found terms or ones that are similar based on that textual data inside of there. And I can see it found a whole bunch of tickets, 133 of them, that had this general concept: high issues with access account, CA Clara, Santa Clara, right? And what you've got is 133 records in that cluster that it found. And this quality number, this 96.5, tells me how closely related or how close the text inside of those records were. And then I have my purity things. And what this looks at some of the contextual information about that. So the structured context around those records, things like category. And it tells me of those 133 in this cluster, 98% of them were categorized as IT business service. 93% of them were subcategory of other. In the assignment group, 57% of them was this IT support group Americas. And then at any point, so I can take these and I can say, you know what, I want to focus in on those 133, and what you'll see inside of the short descriptions is those terms, those key terms that we had there, and they're just in different combinations. And that's why that quality number is at 96.5%. If I swap over here to this high quality cluster, you'll see that these clusters are at 100% of quality, email, Outlook issue. If I click on these, you'll see why they have that 100% is because their short descriptions are all identical there. So that's kind of give you a little sense of what that quality number means, how close all the records in the clusters are in terms of the text that we're used to group them. So that cluster analysis, super helpful when you start wanting to really dig in and identify, really dig in and identify improvement opportunities or where you should be taking action. Now, another thing here on that card that you saw when we clocked it, let's just take this one here. I'm going to take this in progress to awaiting caller info this time. I've also got this apply transition option. And what this is going to allow me to do is say, hey, you know what? I only want to focus in on records that are going through this path of in progress to awaiting caller info. So I could click this apply transition, and you'll notice that it took that transition and immediately set that transition as the filter. But maybe I want to take it to one level further. Maybe I want to come in here and say, hey, you know what? I want to look at when this is happening twice. I want to come in here and say, hey, once it went from in progress to awaiting caller info, I want to focus on the ones that actually go back to in progress. And then not only that, I want to see if it goes back to waiting a caller info again. So things that are going through that hop twice. And you can see here, you can get pretty complex in terms of how you set up this filtering if you want to make it really advanced or make it really simple. And then I can apply this transition, and my map is going to adjust, and it's going to show me just the tickets that went through that transition of in progress to awaiting caller info, back to in progress, back to awaiting caller info again. Which you would hope that you got all the information you needed on the first path, right? There's an inefficiency somewhere in there. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll notice here now, if I keep my model statistics up, this is showing me that of the 3,200 routes that I had earlier, well, with this transition applied, I've got 183 unique routes. It's only 286 of the 22,000 records that went through this path more than once. And actually that number matches what we're seeing here on this node because we're using unique occurrences as well. So we use that transition to filter it. And if I didn't want to access it via the card that popped up on the transition or the node itself, I could have applied that right from here where I've got my advanced filters capability. But then I also have this ability to apply additional conditions above and beyond that. So I can come in here and I can say, I want to filter this even further. Maybe I want to say, only show me the ones where the short description contains Zoom. And I can apply that filter, and the map's going to filter down even further. Now I only have 11 records in my demo data that went back and forth between in progress to waiting caller info twice and have the word Zoom in the filter criteria. But you can see how you have some flexibility to start filtering and working with the map to focus in on areas of opportunity that you think exist. Now, once I've filtered this down, I have this ability to save the filter criteria that I've used and use it later on. Now you'll see here, I'm not going to save this because I already saved this one. It only lets you save the filter criteria set once, but I would give this a name and hit save. And then it would be available to me as a saved filter set to moving forward. Now these saved filter sets are super helpful when I want to start comparing one model to another over time. So let's just come here and I'm just going to remove my filters. So I've got my full map here, but now I have this ability to say, you know what, I got my full map, but I want to compare that to, let's say, my saved filter set for my multi-hop Zoom issue map. And I can hit apply. And now I've got my full map and the map that has those conditions. I can refine it. You can see more of the connections here back and forth. And then I've also, when I do compare, I've got this model statistics box here to show me some of the changes or differences between the two models that I have on the screen. So that ability to start comparing models with one another is there as well. And that's how you would typically do it. You'd hit the compare button. Usually you use a filtered model, or you would have the ability to use one of your historical models up here that you've saved to compare. All right. Wow, we've done a lot so far. Just wow, the time went way faster than I thought. Should have timed myself earlier. All right, so now we've done that. I want to make sure that we cover these breakdown pieces before we run out of time here today, and I also want to make sure that we have time for questions. So real quick, our breakdown filters. These are super powerful on the left-hand side of the screen. So we've looked at a lot of different ways to filter. Your breakdowns also are there to help you. What we can do here, there's two different ways to look at your breakdown filters. One is via this bar chart. This is helpful if you want to see the magnitude of data inside of it, each and every breakdown that's there. I typically like to use this table view because it allows me to do a little bit more comparison of the multiple metrics of an individual breakdown. From a breakdown perspective, remember what we said earlier. These are things like your channel, your assignment group, your service, your category, your priority. And these are, you get 10 of these that you can set up per model. And you can use these to start filtering down your map. So if I come in here, maybe I want to do some channel analysis. And I'm looking here and I see, well, although self-service is the primary channel with 40%, alerts, their average duration is 2 months. That's way higher than any of the other channels that are there. Now, in real life, you're probably going to create different models for machine-generated tickets versus human-generated tickets. It's just going to make your analysis so much easier. But in this case here, let's say we want to focus in just on the alert-generated tickets. I can hit that filter and then say apply. And then maybe I want to come in here and I want to add an additional breakdown filter. I want to come and say, you know what? Let's look at the assignment groups. And if I'm start analyzing the different assignment groups that are working on these tickets that are generating alerts, I see immediately right away, whoa, there's 2,200 of them that have an average duration of 6 months. And they all go through this group here. I want to focus in on those. So now I can isolate that down. I've got my filter criteria. Again, so this is where you start, you can use those breakdowns to start filtering this out or filtering your map. And now I can come over here to my variation analysis and start looking at the individual routes that these tickets have taken. These alert generated tickets work by that group. And you'll notice in variation analysis, remember, this is showing me all the individual hops that a ticket would take, like all the unique routes that are out there. And I can start looking at these routes. And as I mouse over this, you'll notice that they highlight the path on the map. And same thing, if I wanted to start sorting these and organizing these a little bit different, maybe I want to look at the routes, the most traveled paths, or the ones that have the longest average duration. And if I do that here, I can see, all right, here's one that has 3 steps. It's got a lot of the data in here. Let me filter and just show that specific route. So you can filter to a specific route. You'll see this one here where it's going from resolved to closed, and then there was a problem attached. And what immediately jumps out to me is this step of closed to problem attached. The average duration there is 1 year, which is crazy to go from closure. Again, this is demo data, but you can see how you can use the tool to identify an opportunity right away to focus in on. And last thing, I'll just point out here, now that I've got this specific route identified or filtered down, I can come in here and I can run root cause analysis just for this route, or cluster analysis for this route, or just show the records again themselves and say, okay, for those long running ones, what's going on here? Again, alert driven data is not always the best to work with, but kind of that's what I use for the demo here today. All right, I'm just being mindful of time. I want to make sure that we answer some questions. So I'm gonna stop the demo piece there and just open it up for questions. Have any questions came in via the chat?
Yeah, there's one question from Philip. You can read it out here. If instances have been customized with states, will the process optimization tool still be able to include those custom indicators on the life cycle state?
Great question. Great question. The answer is 100% yes. That's the beauty of this. If you think about it, when we set up our model, we're using the fields, right? So we're going to configure the state field, but we're not configuring each and every individual state. It's one of the benefits, again, to using an in-platform process mining solution like Process Optimization is that we have a really good understanding of our data model and on the platform and kind of how it's interconnected. That single data model story that you see in all our marketing material really comes in handy here. So when we say, yep, for this table, we want to use the state field, we're going to inherit and use all of those states that have been customized on the that you may have customized on the platform. And then if you say to yourself, there's states that we don't want to include, you can always filter those out when you're setting up your project itself. It's a good question, Phil. Yeah. Next question. I see your question here in terms of comparing 2 models. So today you can only compare 2 models side by side. I would say we've discussed looking at more than one model and comparing more than one model. I can tell you it's not targeted for the Tokyo release, but it is something that we've heard from other customers interested in, and we're kind of evaluating. You can have up to 5 versions available. And with those filter sets, it's just the side-by-side view of the models. When we start adding more, it can sometimes get overwhelming. So we're investigating like different ways in which we could show the comparison between models.
Dan, I'll go ahead and ask you this one.
Sure.
From a presentation standpoint, I love the interaction and everything else, but one of the questions I would be curious about is if you're going to take some of this data and put it in front of some executives, does it have good reporting and presentation capabilities to export that information?
So from an export perspective, there's not like a single click export option, but that is a good piece of feedback in terms of, I mean, what I've seen people do today is they're taking screenshots and putting them into slides.
Right.
But so one of the things though is, and we didn't cover it, I don't think we've covered it yet, is that ability to go from a performance analytics dashboard directly to a map. So one of the capabilities, if you're on a dashboard, and this is something in general we talk about with customers, is it started way back with performance analytics in terms of hey, do you really want to be presenting static data? Because then if somebody has a question about the static data, you always leave the opportunity to say, well, I'll have to get back to you. If you're running those meetings and those presentations, doing presentations with live dashboards, when somebody has a question about it, you can drill in and continue the conversation right away. And we do have that ability to go from a dashboard to a process optimization map. And then once you get to the workbench, that's an area where you might want to save your filter criteria and use that. Like if you saw something interesting, you would save it as a filter set potentially, and then bring up that filter set. And from an export perspective, not an option today that I'm aware of, but I will go back and look and make sure that I add a post to the community if there is one. But it is something that we've heard before as well that the team is aware of. Good feedback though. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I guess another question. I'm sorry to hog all the questions.
No, that's what we're here for. I'm sorry I took so much time and didn't leave as much for questions.
No, that's fine. From a accessibility standpoint, I don't remember in the last presentation whether you guys covered roles and personas from that perspective, but does it have pretty good control that if you did want to create a dashboard as part of the workspace for, say, managers of organizations and so forth, that you can help control what amount of data they're able to see, so that, so some organizations are sensitive about, seeing other parts of the organization and how they're performing, right?
Yep.
And it's more about being able to say, well, I want to know how my group is performing so that I can do my improvement.
Yep. So there's a couple of approaches there, or a couple of things there. One, there are roles. There's 4 specific roles for process optimization: admin, analyst, viewer, and I think it's develop PO, the PO for developer. The viewer doesn't give you any creation capability. It just allows you to view maps. And then the others give you various levels of creation capabilities and administration capabilities. So there's roles that you can apply there. In terms of kind of what data you can see, ACLs apply. So when you're running a map, whoever's running it, whatever ACLs they have around given data, they're going to be applied from that perspective. We also are domain separated supported, so that anything you do from a domain separation perspective is going to be applied here. And then one of the things that's coming in the Tokyo release, and I got the next session we're going to do is focused on the Tokyo capabilities, is an integration with workforce optimization. And with workforce optimization, you have specific dashboards for teams. And the idea there is that, hey, when a manager would come into a workforce optimization screen to look at their team's performance, you would then start seeing specific process. There's 3 that we're showing: the bottleneck, the findings cards, and I believe it's the process variance cards inside of that workforce optimization, and they're specific to that person's team. So we are starting to kind of create that combined experience with workforce optimization to get that specificity that you're talking about from a data perspective. Did that help?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think of like the idle role, for example, has access to pretty much see all the content in the CMDB, right?
Yep.
So I think to myself, but from an idle user, they can also see other people's tickets for the most part, right? Unless you put some ACLs in place on those tables where they can only see their own tickets. So that's kind of what I was thinking about, is whether or not that kind of information could be controlled. So it has to be done at the ACL level. Thank you.
And there's also it's probably a conversation for a whole session probably in terms of governance around this, because you can also then, when you're creating the projects themselves, you can kind of put the filter criteria on it at some levels as well, to say, hey, this project is created with these filter criteria, and then just share that specific project with a certain person. And if they're a viewer, they would only be able to see
right.
They wouldn't be able to kind of adjust it. So, you'd have maybe your PO developer or PO analyst create it and then share it with somebody if you wanted to control what data they can see.
So I'm going to ask one more and then I'll shut up. I'm thinking, bigger picture, because in my previous life, one of the things that we did is we created balanced scorecards for our executive leadership, right? So I think to myself, this is great about process optimization at the process level, but are you thinking about expanding the capabilities of performance into things like how are projects performing in agile space, for example, and how does that compare to the tasks that are being assigned to those groups and their performance in those areas as well?
100%. So today, process optimization is available for incident and customer service, or sorry, I should say that's for IT workflow and customer service workflow. In Tokyo, we're adding HR and App Engine, so applying to custom tables. And then our goal long-term is to be able to apply process optimization to every workflow that you're running on the platform, including that ITBM, PPM space. That's probably the number one ask outside of the workflows that we currently have support for today. So it's doable. We're just working on some of the details.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I could probably sit here all day, Dan, and think of more. I do have one more that just came to mind when you mentioned that. And my thought was that, you mentioned earlier about alerts when they come in from machine-generated activities in the ITSM space, right?
Yep.
It got me thinking about the life cycle of CIs in the CMDB and the states that they go through. Now, mind you, there's already tools in place to look for orphans and staleness and things like that in those regards. But I also think to myself, from a performance standpoint, if you have a part of the organization that's responsible for certain CIs within the organization, not only are they processing tickets and performing from a customer standpoint, they may be working with assets within the inventory as well. So I'd be real curious to mesh those up together to see holistically how is a particular group performing against assets and customer service at the same time.
I will tell you internally here at ServiceNow, because we don't have any licensing restrictions in terms of how we use solutions, we have applied it to asset data and found some opportunities to improve in that cycle. So you're spot on. Okay. I'd love to dig into the use case. This is what these sessions eventually will grow to. I think is just us talking. When I learned to shut up a little bit sooner, is us talking about these specific use cases as a group, because there is so much opportunity that's out there.
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? I know we're on time, but for anybody else, other questions? Perfect. So for recording purposes, though, I do want to make sure that I get these in the recording. And if you were here the last time, you've probably seen this already. But for those that are new, and you've now seen some of the power that's there when it comes to in-platform processing or process optimization, what are you going to do next? Well, out there on the Now Learning site, there is a Process Optimizations Essentials course. It takes about 90 minutes. I highly recommend that you run through that. Then the next step would be, on any subprod instance, you have the ability to activate the process optimization, or I should say non-prod instance. You have the ability to activate the process optimization plugin, turn on the process optimization content pack, and mine a subset of 4,000 records for a given process. So you do have the ability to try this on your own. There's some more details in terms of activation on the community site, which is one of the other areas of resources that I'll point out here. there is a community forum specifically focused on process optimization. So you can go there. We've got an FAQ out there that's got most of the common questions that come up when we talk to customers around process optimization. It's got links to all the other resources in that FAQ. There's recorded demos and recorded presentations out there. So if you want to share this with other folks inside of your organization, there's a way to share a presentation and a demo in terms of the value that this solution potentially offers. So there's plenty of resources out there. And if you had a question and you didn't want to ask it today on the recording or on this session, please go to the community and post it, and we'll respond to it as quickly as we possibly can. Last chance for anyone. Any questions that you didn't get out there today that we want to cover? All right. One last thing, just so we've done now 2 sessions. We've covered how process mining works and configuring your first model. We spent probably way too much time today going through all the different ways that you can work with the Analyst Workbench to start analyzing your data that you've mined. What we're going to do in the next session coming up August 12th is we'll talk about what's coming in the Tokyo release for process optimization. So if you're still on here, or if you're watching this recording, make sure you register for that session if you're interested to see what's coming above and beyond what we've discussed about today and what's coming in the future. Appreciate everyone's time and look forward to seeing you on the next one.